And welcome back to the second segment of our show this morning. We're switching gears. We're going to have a conversation on a topic that we're calling the importance of human relationships and the promotion of these relationships. That being said, we have with us this morning Ganesha Smith. She is the Human Development Coordinator for the Department of Human Services. Good morning, Ganesha. Good morning. And Shanalee Buckley. She is a Child Protection Officer, also from the Department of Human Services.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
The topic at hand is the profession of social work. Let's begin there. What does this mean, and how seriously do we as Belizeans look at that particular area of work?
Okay. Social work is more working with a vulnerable population, moving them to a point of sustainability, that they could navigate through systems, that they could advocate for themselves. So it's working with a large cadre of people, and for us it's from birth to death. Anybody that needs the type of services that we offer, we would work with. In terms of people understanding what we do, I think we haven't had a lot of promotion in terms of explaining what social work does, primarily under the Department of Human Services. We fall under the Ministry of Human Development, of course, and then Department of Human Services. To zone that in a little bit more, myself and Ms. Buckley work with the Child Protection Unit. And that is a unit that responds to all types of abuse.
Which we casually call the social.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But that is not only, that is only one aspect of social work within our ministry. So it's the, people have this idea that that is all we do, and there's much more to it than that.
Yeah. You know, I have to say, and maybe we can start off by understanding why you two chose this particular profession. It is very understated in our society, and you play such a critical role on the ground with families, individuals. Why did you choose to become a social worker?
For me, the choice of becoming a social worker was obvious. From a very young age, I've always been family oriented. I've always liked to assist people. So I always say that this career chose me. It's very rewarding to go into families, go into communities, and effect some level of change. And it's a bonus that I get paid to do something that I actually love.
Yeah. And for you, Ganesha?
I think for me, earlier, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I started off working as a truancy officer. And doing that, I don't think I was being effective there, because there were limitations and barriers. So I think I needed to do more, hence the reason I went into that, the social work field.
Have you found it to be rewarding from a personal perspective of development?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I think I have grown as an individual. I have been exposed to a lot of things that I think I wasn't to before, so it has allowed me to see things in different lens. It also becomes rewarding when you see you working with people and they have moved, they have made change, they have made progress.
What, you know, there's a lot of patience involved in your profession. I can't underestimate that at all. When you're working with human beings and in improving their lives, it's not something that you see the results overnight. You know, it's like using an ice pick to get through an iceberg. How do you find your rewards along the way? How do you stay encouraged and motivated?
I think as social workers, we celebrate small victories. So, for example, like I said, as a child protection officer, we deal with issues of abuse. So you might find that you have a parent who doesn't know how to communicate or doesn't know how to effectively discipline their child. And so by just referring them to a parenting session, you see changes in how they interact with their children and interact with their families. And those are the small victories. Those are the things that keeps us motivated and keeps us wanting to do more for our clients.
Yeah. And for you?
I think similarly.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's just looking at our children and seeing them as our future and knowing that you have to do something to put them in that direction. So I think that's my drive, working with the children primarily to get them on the right track.
What is the status of the profession? Do we see more people interested? We know there is a formal social work program in our university, so people can be trained right here in country to be able to move into social work.
I don't see a lot of people doing, going in that particular area. And what we have been seeing is a lot of females, not a lot of males wanting to go in that direction. I think there is room for a lot more promotion. There is need for a lot more social workers within country. So it is what it is now, but you would want to see more individuals and more men wanting to go in that direction.
What are your thoughts on the perception of social work?
Yes.
Because for whatever reason, there are those of us in society who kind of shun away from the idea of, okay, well, it's child protection, or then go from house to house or what have you. How do you sort of combat that sort of perception?
Approach is key for us. I think building relationship, getting to know individuals or families on a different level. What people see is most of what they hear. Child protection, all in the take where people picnic. That is not ideally the case. We try to work with families. Our main goal is family preservation. So where that can remain, we work very hard. And to do that, you have to build relationship with families. You need to get in their home. You have to meet them where they are, and you have to walk them through that process to maintain a family together. So it's more than just taking away children. And that is just I won't say it is the inevitable at some times, but not necessarily
at all times.
At all times, or even the beginning.
That's not the first.
No, it's not.
Yeah, and I think people don't always know that you do quite a bit of work before a child is removed. It has to be a tough situation. As a child protection officer, tell me the process that you go through.
Okay, so the first contact is the intake. So we get the information about whatever issue that is happening. We go into homes, schools. What we try to do is to interview a child in a place where he or she is comfortable. And so we get that information from the child. We also speak to other parties that may have an interest. For example, we go to the schools to hear from the teachers what is going on with the child at school. We do medical examinations and things like that. In the event that we find that a child is at risk of being harmed or has been harmed, then we take further action. It may be, like Ms. Smith said, working with the families within the context of their home, and then as a last resort, maybe moving towards removal of that child if the home is not a safe environment for them. Because at the end of the day, we work in the best interest of the children that we serve.
That's kind of a no-win situation for you sometimes. If I have a neighbor and I see that they are neglecting or hurting their child and I call you, and I see you don't remove them because you're doing the counseling and the work with them, I feel that you're not doing enough. And if I'm an outside observer and I see you taking a child away from a family, I say, how dare you? What kind of mechanisms do you have in place for your own self that you stay focused on the work? Because I'm trying to get to the core of it, which is it's not easy to do. You're looking out for the best interest of children, while other people who don't know the full facts of the story are judging and condemning.
I think we try to work just on facts. We cannot become distracted by everything else and everyone else. People will be very harsh, will be very judgmental on the work that we do. But again, we work in the best interest of the child. And so it is to remain focused and try to get, lack of a better word, maybe buy-in from the parents to understand why we're doing what we're doing. And then so how do we develop a plan to move forward?
Yeah, yeah. Now, and when you talk about the situations that you encounter with children, what are some of the things that you see that you feel that if people were just aware that they could do differently, maybe in parenting style or in their own responsibilities as parents, that the wider society needs to know?
I think discipline. It's most persons that we have come in contact with still believes that corporal punishment is the best way to go. And we have been moving from that time where that is the first and foremost thing you do. You whip a child or you lash a child. So that is one of the things I think we would want to shift.
And how do you win that argument in a household?
With this traditionalism.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have to bring it to the point when you hit a child, what happens? What's the reaction that you get, as opposed to positive discipline, using something the child likes, rewarding the child and not always being somewhat taking away stuff. So you have to create a balance. Physical abuse, psychological abuse comes with long-term effects, and so you would have sometimes children later on start displaying uncontrollable behavior. You don't know where that is coming from, but it is a build-up of all the abuse that has occurred when you thought you were parenting, when you thought you were disciplining. So
and in fact, I guess some people cross the line from what they think is discipline into full-fledged abuse.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And so one of the things that we do with our clients, we have parenting sessions, because it's not just us telling them you cannot lash your children, but we need to teach them new methods and new techniques, because if we're removing the corporal punishment, then we need to equip them with some better skills as well.
I think, I don't know, you'll forgive me, the whole idea of corporal punishment and the way you go about disciplining children, I think remains a controversial one, simply because you have various schools of thought on the same issue, right? You have those who are spare the rod, spoil the child, and then you have those who are more progressive in the way they look at dealing with children and behavioral issues. When you deal with clients and they have their minds set on one way or the other, perhaps not in favor of an alternative form of discipline, how do you deal with those individuals to try to change that? Because you're looking more at a cultural thing as opposed to something where you can easily sway their beliefs.
I think you have to be persistent. So if it's a situation where you're trying to get your clients to see things a certain way, you need to be persistent with them. And I think education is the key. Because yes, while corporal punishment is, like you said, traditional, we need to educate our parents. We need to let them know that this is not the only way. I know a lot of my clients like to say, well, they beat me when I'm younger. I say, they are good. And so we have to educate them. We have to show them different ways. It's by no means easy, and but we have to be persistent. We cannot give up.
Another thing is we cannot just look at the abuse at hand. We need to get to what is the root of the problem. And for you to get to understanding or to kind of change their mindset, you need to see what they're going through, what is causing some of these triggers for you to be abusive. And then we can work on changing their mindset.
Do you see people make that turnaround very often? And what seems to be the trick there?
It's a lot of work.
I
think a lot of patience. You have to show commitment. What we have seen is that clients don't want someone to come in and say, oh, I have a report that you just beat your child, you can't do that, do this, and this. But it is to listen to them, to understand. So it's not overnight. We don't usually see people change overnight. Sometimes it takes months for them to understand that this is not the right way to go. Look, let's try this and see the reaction of your child, and then we can wait and see, okay, maybe this is the better direction to go.
I presume that that is challenging simply because as parents we have this naturally possessive instinct over our kids. Like,
Yes. Well,
in other
nobody
words,
wants
you
to be
can't
told
tell
how to
me-
parent.
You can't tell me how to deal with my picnic and my picnic. That's the way we think. So it's hard for any of us to allow someone else in with a totally different position or way of doing things. How do you combat that?
Well, what protects us a lot is the Families and Children Act, which is the legislation that governs child protection. And so we use that a lot to explain to persons that we're not coming from a personal standpoint, but we're coming from one that is written legislation that we need to adhere to. So that is one of the ways we try to combat that. Not that we use that to be a police, but we use that to some balance.
And that's where I wanted to be clear too, because you're not going into homes where somebody spanked their child one time or two times. You're seeing kind of the worst of the society. The things that we can't even imagine in our nightmares taking place in homes, you're exposed to. And I didn't miss earlier when you said that there's a need for more social workers. And I want to ask very openly, how are you able to keep up with the load of cases that you have across the country? Are we stretched thin in terms of being able to cover all the reports that are made?
I think so far we have been able, but we're a little bit stretched thin. You would want to give a client the maximum.
Yes.
And so to do that, an officer has to have a very, very small caseload. Hence the reason I'm putting it out there that the profession, the field work is needed. We need more officers in that area. And it allows us to be more effective to our clients.
What's the average caseload for a social worker right now, for a child protection officer?
For a child protection officer, it is maybe about 60 to 75.
Let me ask
And
this.
what is the average, the preferred, the first world average?
30.
30, half of that.
30.
Now, how do you prioritize then? So if I have 60 families, that's what that is, 60 families that I have to keep up with and talk to and ensure that they're implementing some of the strategies and keeping up with parenting sessions, how do you prioritize who gets more attention?
Well, it depends on the allegation that is being made.
Okay.
And so we do have an internal prioritization list.
Okay.
And so you work based on what is most needed now. In addition to that, we have good support from our other sister departments that allows us to refer to them for the services they offer. So again, I think it's fairly good enough in terms of case managing because of the resources that we have.
How does the child protection services and by extension the human development ministry interface with the NCFC, for instance, where you have children and families at the heart of what they do?
NCFC is more of a policy body, and they do a lot of coordinating efforts with the different committees as it relates to families and children. So we do have members who sit on several committees that comes under the umbrella of NCFC.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I think he's talking about other implementing agencies, maybe like the Women's Department or CRD, for example.
They're a part of our ministry as well, so they too interface at some point with NCFC depending on, like for example, we had just launched with NCFC and we were partnered with that, the parenting manual.
Yeah.
So we just did that. We participated in the Children's Agenda 2015 to 2030. So we do work with NCFC in some of these efforts.
So you're going to be celebrating World Social Work Day. And,
Yes.
and I have a question, because I see social work like teachers, that it can't just be a job that you go to collect a paycheck, because of the empathy and the human characteristics that you have to bring to it. What would you say is the greatest challenge in recruiting more people to taking on this work?
Greatest challenge. I don't think I've thought of that before.
I mean, it's not a high-paying profession. I thought that was going to be the first one.
It has to be from the heart.
Yeah.
It definitely has to be from the heart. You have to be someone who likes working with people. You have to be someone who is open to learn, and that's pretty much it. It has to come from the heart.
Yeah. And what are the rewards? What are the personal rewards that you get from it?
This profession is very gratifying. I mean, there's a special feeling that you get when you see that you were able to effect some kind of change in your client's situation and in their lives.
Yeah.
I can't even put it into words, but it's something you feel inside that you know, okay, we were able to move our client from one point to the other. And although it may sound cliche, we are changing the world, one child at a time, one family at a time.
Yeah. So how do you celebrate Social Work Day?
As a ministry, we would do several things. We would have luncheon for our staff. We would acknowledge them, show appreciation by giving them small tokens, just so that they know. It's hard to reward a social worker for the work that they do, because it is, it is enormous. But we do appreciate the work of our staff across ministry, and we try to acknowledge them every given time that we have the opportunity. We try to acknowledge them. Yeah.
And what do you say to people who are considering the profession? What do they need to know?
It's not easy. So if you want to become a social worker, you need to be sure that it's what you want, because it takes you away from your family a lot of times. But I will also encourage people to take the leap of faith. If your heart is there, that's the basic thing that you need.
And from you, Ganesha, what would you tell people?
Just be willing and committed. Commitment is key for being a social worker. If you start something, you have to see it through to the finish. So if you know that you are someone who is committed and willing to work, then by all means.
All right. And so the activities you have lined up for Social Work Day is going to be focusing on the social workers who are in the field?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add about this celebration?
I just think I want to say publicly, I don't think we have done it before, but thank you to our ministry staff, our frontline staff. We do appreciate the work that they do every single day. We know it's hard, but as Ms. Buckley said, it is gratifying when we see our clients not needing the assistance, not needing us to find a job, because they have reached the point where they can sustain themselves. It's a really, really wonderful feeling. I will end off by saying that we are not in this for the income, but for the outcome of our clients.
Well said.
Absolutely. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for being social workers in this country, and to all the other social workers as well. Thank you for the work that you do. We appreciate you coming in and just sharing a tidbit of the extent of the work and influence that you have.
Thanks for having us.
We're going to go ahead and take our final break, and when we come back, we'll have our wrap-up, so stay tuned.